look at research, when women lead, those businesses become highly profitable. I have the privilege of working for an entity that is led by women, which is a very successful entity as well. Financial services sector is one of the best in the world. If you travel, you'll see that. Like, and you are shocked how we have this at home. Why do you still want my card? You want to go with my card in the US to use it where?
Don't they have checks somewhere?
What perpetuates, I would say, the problem that we have from a South African market perspective would definitely be that the cost of education for tertiary institutions is quite high. And we have a problem with an unequal society, so not everyone can afford to go into university.
Hello, welcome to this latest episode of ITWeb TV. My name is Simnikiwe Mzekandaba. When this episode airs, it will be International Women's Day, so it's only apt that we have a trailblazer for women in tech as our guest for this episode. I'm, of course, talking about Nomonde White-Ndlovu, who is the CIO of Bidvest Bank, as well as a seasoned technology executive. She's also, of course, the 2024 recipient of the CIO of the Year award. Nomonde, welcome.
So thank you very much for the invitation. I look forward to our conversation today. Happy International Women's Day, ladies. And I hope you celebrate yourselves beyond other people celebrating you. I hope you treat yourself to something amazing today.
Awesome. Thank you, Nomonde. I just want to hear from you, as I said, that, you were named the CIO of the Year at the, it's like an ICT coveted award.
Yes.
Being named, how did you feel? How did you feel when that happened?
I was very humbled as a starting point. I wasn't expecting it. I think just award stuff just generally are things that I tend to stay away from. But it was very humbling to actually be recognized by my peers. It's not something that I actually take for granted at all. And I think it's only by grace. It's truly just only by God's grace, not because of my own wisdom. So anytime you're recognized at that level, it really has very little to do with you. So it had very little to do with me. I think it's just a humbling experience more than anything else. I was shocked. I'm always shocked when these things happen, but I'm truly grateful for the recognition. It meant everything.
You mentioned something very important about being recognized by your peers. We take it for granted because, like you are in the industry, you work, but then when your peers see the amount of work that you put into what you do, it's like literally, for me, I think it would be the cherry on top.
Yeah, you're right. It is that, but also it's, in addition to that, it's a recognition that I've worked with incredible people. Like the teams that I've had the privilege of being a part of actually culminate into, I suppose, the amazing stuff that you can actually put out into the market. So it just also made me have a deep appreciation of the people I'm surrounded by as well.
And when before we actually this episode started, we started filming. We were talking about your career, and you mentioned working for one of the big four banks, and you also spoke about your time now at Bidvest, how long you've been there with Bidvest Bank. Can you just give us just a color, or like a brief color of who Nomonde is in terms of your career, how you started out, and where you are to where you are now?
Sure, with pleasure. I actually started right at the beginning. Like, if you talk about a technology career, by the way, I studied politics and law, so like a very short story of my background. So when I was in varsity, I was working part-time to be able to take care and help my parents with the financial burden at home. And I had a younger sister, so I actually wanted to be able to do stuff for us. So I started working in a call center part-time, actually, for Nedbank many years ago, because they used to hire students. And then I moved into, like, in my final year, I got a job that would have paid me more, because you get paid, what was it, 10 rand an hour, like back in the day, right? And I'd convinced my parents to allow me to buy a car. So obviously my entire salary was going to this car, and I just needed to make more money. So I got an opportunity to work for UCS Solutions, which then was a SAP consultancy firm back in the day. And I guess the rest is history. I fell in love with tech from there. So I graduated, but I never left technology. So I've never practiced as a lawyer at all. So when I entered UCS Solutions, I was the one you call for password. You said, we're on holiday. And then
You're part of the tech.
I was, like, literally, and changed. And then I moved into service delivery. So then I I was, I got a job as a junior service delivery manager. And it was literally Jane Canny taking a shot. Absolutely adore Jane. If you've watched The Devil Wears Prada and how fabulous Meryl Streep is there. I mean, that was Jane. She still is that fabulous. But I think she was the first woman to actually give me like a shot to say, okay, so what is it that you want to do in tech? Because I said to her, I was told, actually, it was a conversation with HR in the business then, that because I'd studied law and politics, there wasn't a place for me in technology. And she said, that's the silliest thing I've ever heard. What would you want to do in this business? And to be honest, I think moving into tech, I was a young person. I was silly. It was looking at material things, and the service delivery managers drove really nice cars. So I was like, maybe this is what I should be doing. So it was a young person's view of it. But I appreciate my naivety because I fell in love with this industry from that point on. And I think from just growing from a junior role, I've then embraced it, loved every moment of it because no one day is ever the same. And I've had the blessing and pleasure of working with really difficult people, but also people who equally push me towards excellence to say, if you're going to be here, give your best in absolutely everything that you do. So I've never taken any opportunity that I've been given for granted at all. And I've always immersed myself in every role and opportunity that I have to actually make the most out of it. Because I see it as building blocks into building who I am eventually going to be. I don't think any of us reach our full potential as human beings because life is long. But I have had fun in this sector, man. I've met amazing people and I've been able to build like a really great career with my little degree, degree, so we've had a time, man. And I think what it's helped me with, and I think I was actually at my old high school yesterday, Parktown Girls, doing a keynote, and we spoke about degrees. And my view on degrees is simply that it gets you in. All it says to people is that you are resilient and you have the ability to see something through. But careers can literally be like jungle gyms. And I don't think you should be bogged down or tied down by a degree that you do. Because all industries require a different lens to come from different people. And I think what I've been able to actually bring to the roles that I've had is my strategic thinking. And my ability to be able to engage with people at all levels. And a lot of technologists that I've had the pleasure of working with and leading don't want to deal with people. So I have the ability to bridge the gap between understanding what we need to do from a technology perspective and explaining to the business what are the things that we actually need to get done, and having the business explain what they need and being able to actually speak at both technology level as well as business level.
From tech team member, how does one then become CIO?
With great difficulty. With great difficulty and with, through God's grace. This journey hasn't been easy. I think, let me just say that, right? So it hasn't been an easy journey, but I think I've just had krachman. I think that's probably the right word because this industry is very male dominated, right? And in the beginning, specifically that transition from working in a call center to then being a junior service delivery manager, with people like, I'm not going to take instructions for you. Who do you think you are, And back then, I was surrounded by a lot of Afrikaans-speaking gentlemen. While I can hear Afrikaans, it's when you're in a room, in a meeting, it excludes you from the conversation if you're not going to be able to answer back. So I was young.
So the conversation would still be in Afrikaans.
But what I then did is I would then retaliate. I'm not saying do this, ladies. I was a child. I just thought I'd say it was my early 20s. So I think it's important to note that. I would respond in Xhosa Tswana just to show you that actually this is not okay. I think we actually need to deal with each other with respect. And I think it was that stubbornness, but also the willingness to say, I want to understand what you do. I want us to partner and collaborate. I'm not here to make your life difficult. If anything, I want us to actually be able to do what we need to do for our clients so that they are happy with the services that we provide. But I also had women championing for me, man. I had Alice Marks who could see it. I learned a lot from Alice, and she was a difficult boss at the time, rightfully so, because she aspired for excellence. And you can imagine if I've never done this a day in my life, something that would take you probably 30 minutes to do is taking me like 5 hours to actually get done because I'm trying to learn. But I appreciate that she insisted on excellence. But I also am so grateful for the people who are around me then, like Linnell Harris, Clyde as well, who were already seasoned executives who took pity on a small child like entering this market. But they spent time with me to actually teach me the ropes, and I'll forever be grateful for that. And that's why I fundamentally believe in, regardless of how far you grow, it's so important to always send the elevator down for everybody else, because you don't live on an island by yourself. There are people who actually make up the sum total of who you become, like, over time. So I had phenomenal women and men who actually plowed into me with great intention. It has been a journey to actually get here. But I think the key thing that they've always instilled in me as well is that you can't go at it alone. And even in my, the later jobs that I would have in financial services and ITWeb, even at BAT, when I worked for BAT, it was the same principle that I got. I worked for very, very difficult executives. So that krach that came in is because I had tough bosses. So I actually had to boss up myself and actually deliver with excellence, because all of them expected that. My age didn't matter. It was like, well, you have passion, you're competent, you will be competent. If you're not yet, I expect you to pull up your socks. And I didn't have a choice. I actually had to grow up quite quickly. But I'm grateful that I was thrown into the deep end, because this is who you're seeing today.
Yeah. No, I also have a similar story in terms of what you were saying about like women giving you the shot, like taking a shot on you. And for me as well, it's been, when I think back to my, like, back on my career and how I've, the people, like all my editors, a lot of them have been women and advocating for me and pushing me and, taking chances on me, I suppose, as well. Like, so we can't take that for granted.
Absolutely.
Because it actually plays a role in, it's played a role in your life. But also it has
Absolutely.
played a role in my life. But Nomonde, just to go back again to, the persistent, like you said, male dominated industry, you are probably in most cases the only Black female in that room. So what would you say are some of the persistent challenges that women face in reaching these like C-suite roles and getting there,
Yo,
or what?
that's question. Yeah. You're right. It is difficult. And you're right. There have been instances where you are the only, like, person of color, or the only woman around the room, and it hasn't, so been easy. I think, again, it's I'm Christian, so my faith has been a fundamental key thing for me to actually move me through. And I remember the constant prayer I used to have every single day, like when I knew, this day, another like battle, another fight, probably I'm gonna have another moment in crying in the bathroom, but they won't see me cry, it's okay, was really around, please order my footsteps and speak through me, because I don't always know what to do, but give me the strength and the covering to figure it out. And it was learning not to cower, but to ensure that I would learn and understand that thing so well that you can't deny my competence in it at all. And that you will see me as an equal, even if you didn't want to. Because I didn't want you to judge me based on the color of my skin, because I had to get it right. Because I didn't want to be the only person of color in that seat. I needed to make sure that other people could still actually have an opportunity there. And I recognize that in my failure, I'm failing on behalf of so many other people who deserve a shot. And I'm not saying that I was the person who was the smartest in the room or who deserved the shot, but by God's grace, I got that shot. And I wasn't prepared to mess it up for anyone else coming behind me. So all the scars that I've had to take as a result of the really horrible and racist experiences that I have had do not measure up to the kind experiences that I've had from white men and women as well, and Indian men and women, colored men and women, who have played such a critical role in my career and elevating me. So the hate I experienced is inconsequential in comparison to the people I've had in my corner who rooted for me when they didn't need to, because we didn't look the same, we didn't necessarily have the same value set, and there's never an expectation for me to change my values, because I've always been clear in terms of the importance of ensuring that you have diversity in the teams that you are bringing in. I was never apologetic about that in any businesses that I've been in. I mean, even if you ask my colleagues from ITWeb, if there was an opportunity to hire a woman or have representation of a Black person, I was going to find that person. So the narrative that we don't exist is not true, because you and I are sitting here as professionals today. So I didn't use the seats that the opportunities that I got, or the seat that I got at the table. I didn't waste it. And I wanted to actually make sure that there were more of us who actually had those opportunities. But at the same token, I wanted to make sure that you didn't have to pay the school fees that I paid in order for you to be there. So it was never lost on me to actually ensure that the people coming after me have a better experience than I actually had. More so if it was women, because we don't have sufficient women in this industry. And I remember when I was pregnant working at ITWeb, I wanted to breastfeed because I was donating milk as well. And there was no mother's room. That's what it's called, where you can actually express milk during the day when you're back at work. And I remember having to go to the disabled bathroom to do it, but I'd have to, like dispose of the milk. And I was like, but this is not right, actually. So I went on this quest of saying we actually need to figure it out. I had a very supportive a boss then who's still in my life, one of the most phenomenal leaders I've ever worked for, Wilhelm Krach. I was like, okay, well, then figure it out. Like, what do we need to then tell me what to do? And we actually got a mother's room, like eventually. But it wasn't even just about me, because by the time it was put in place, I was done breastfeeding, right? But it was important for it to be there. So you didn't have to feel like if you come back into corporate, you then had to compromise you actually wanting to give the best to your kids, anything like that. So I've always been of the view that to whom much is given, much is required. And you don't take those opportunities for granted, because I'm going to die. I'm sorry to be morbid. All of us are going to die, right? And I would like a shot at getting into heaven. But I feel like when we get there, God is going to ask, you had a mouthful of teeth on that day when you could have, given James and Palesa equal salary because that's what they deserve. You chose not to do that and you turn a blind eye. Why is that? And I must account for that. So I hold myself to that, to say, am I comfortable with this decision that actually has to be made? And if I'm not, what am I doing to actually correct it?
Sure, no wonder you said so much to think about, eh? But just maybe before we switch to the technology part of our conversation, I just want to hear from you then. Are you seeing, like you've noticed a change in, like, let's say your former organizations, what they had to do because you brought the situation to the table? So are you seeing more females becoming CIOs or being placed in senior executive roles, like within the ICT sector?
I am, and it's really exciting. So we're in the process of gearing up for our White Woman Awards that are coming up in April. And the number of nominations and applications that we actually have seen are very strong candidates who are running, technology shops and big corporates in the country is actually quite humbling and actually brings a tear to my eye. And I can understand why corporates are now doing this. Because the reality, if we look at research, when women lead, those businesses become highly profitable. I have the privilege of working for an entity that is led by women, which is a very successful entity as well. So we are definitely seeing a change. I think also outside of just ICT, I have one of the most progressive governments in the world. Yes, we have challenges. I'm not taking away from that. But if you actually look at the female representation that actually sits in government, that's something to actually be proud of from a country perspective. Yes, there are other challenges that we need to look into, but at least we've got a very progressive constitution that wants to ensure that we actually get to a point of having like 50-50 representation. There's a lot more work for us to do though, so I'm not taking that for granted. I do think that we still can do better in terms of ensuring that we actually have a lot more female executives in technology than we do right now. But we are doing the work to actually ensure that, one, they're recognized, and this is why the White Women Awards are so important to us. And two, you must get your flowers while you're still alive. This country must actually know that you're doing phenomenal things so that you get other opportunities to actually create impact in other corporate entities.
We know the role of tech. We know how important it is. We've seen how it's changed our lives for the better. Sometimes obviously there's the bad side, let's say social media, for example. But if we're looking at some of the, South Africa is not necessarily, it's a great country, but we have our challenges.
Absolutely, yes.
How do we then use tech, or how does tech play a role in trying to address some of those challenges? What would you say needs to happen in that way?
Such a hard question, but like, it's fair to put me on the spot. I think it's only fair. So I think maybe if we unpack some of the most pervasive challenges, I would say, that impact technology, or technology, plays a role in. The first one I would talk about is definitely the digital divide that actually exists in our country, where access to technology, specifically to poorer communities, more so rural communities, which are impacted more than anyone else. That is a huge challenge that we actually need to look into addressing. And I think during COVID, it became even more pervasive when kids were excluded from learning. So you have your 1% in the country, which those kids go to private school or, schools with means where they could continue learning online because they've got access to the internet, and then life just continues. But in schools where they don't have access to technology and to the internet, they can't learn.
Yeah.
That is a huge problem because we need to make sure that all of our children have the ability to stay in school. So that's problem number one. And then the other issue that would exist is, like the high cost of data and broadband that faces the country. It becomes more pervasive again in rural areas where they don't have access to connectivity and internet access as easily as you do in your cities, right? And then the other issue is load shedding. When we are load shed, it impacts ICT services across, right? You get wonky internet as well. So that in and of itself impacts businesses. Because if you can't afford to actually get solar within your organization and business, you shut down in the moments that you actually can't get access to electricity, and then you actually can't trade. And what we're then doing is we're compounding the issue where we know South Africa is one of the most unequal societies in the world. We can't afford to increase the gap of unemployment. So that's also another issue and challenge that we actually need to delve into. I'm not saying that I've got answers for all the order, because some of these are like country issues that we actually need to deep dive into. But I think with the first one, as it relates to the digital divide, there is a responsibility for corporate citizens as well as government entities to work together to figure out a plan of how do we actually ensure that not infancy, because they can't, when kids are in primary school, they have access to technology, which is not expensive, but they know how to use computers to engage with technology from a very young age. It should not be that people with access have the ability to, work with technology, and kids who can't do that. It must start there. But equally so, educating educators who educate kids around the importance of how to use technology as well, because you can't exclude them in the journey of doing that. And actually, iSchool Africa does a great job in doing that, where they actually send out equipment to rural communities where kids can actually learn on iPads. So that's one way where I think a corporate entity is partnering with actual schools and not saying, I'm going to rely on the government to actually help me figure this thing out. Because when you educate all of us, it's easier then to create an inflow of bigger opportunities that will actually open up and materialize for all of us in the long run. So we all have like a responsibility to actually solve for that. There's an issue which is like data. I mean, MTN, Vodacom, Cell C, all of our large providers. I think we actually all need to figure out how do we make it more accessible. I appreciate the fact that during COVID again, we zero rated access for universities and schools, which is important. But how do we also get to a point where it becomes more affordable for citizens, to actually make sure that all of us actually get to a point where we are affair with technology? I do think that there is a solve if we all work together and not as competitors, where we could actually ensure that we find a plan that actually benefits all South Africans.
And hopefully they'll solve the load shedding part as well.
Yes, I mean, it's a difficult one to comment on because we've done well. Thank you, Eskom, for we had a couple of months of steady electricity, but I'm confident in the leaders that we have that we'll find a long-term solution.
Let's hope. Technology, obviously, Nomonde, we seeing it a lot. Well, advancement of tech, i.e., generative AI or inclusion of AI within, and we're seeing a lot of banks or financial institutions looking at personalized, let's say, for example, personalized AI banking assistance becoming like a new standard now. But what's your take on how because you're coming from a banking space, but what's your take on the way that they're integrating technology, be it AI, into providing services or improving their processes?
Yeah, I think our financial services sector is one of the best in the world. If you travel, you'll see that. And you are shocked how we have this at home. Why do you still want my card? You want to go with my card in the US to use it where?
Don't they have checks somewhere?
Yes, when you travel to South Africa, you're like, why are you taking my card? Why must you actually, And I think it's good to always have that fear of God that you can't not have your eyes open.
Yeah.
But the reason why I think we have a great financial services industry is one, I mean, how we integrate AI tools within our ecosystem. There's fraud detection tools that we actually use, which would monitor behaviors and patterns on how your account is moving, your digital footprint. If there's issues, banks generally will lock down your account and call you to actually make sure that you're the one who's actually transacting.
Yeah.
That's one way that AI is actually helping us. And then in our risk assessments as well, when it comes to risk assessing you as a potential client of what your potential, affordability may or may not be. So utilizing data analytics to actually help us make decisions. I think we're ahead of the curve in most regards if you compare us to actually other financial services entities. And I know the question of AI, you want to then unpack big machine learning things, but sometimes it's in the small things that actually help customers to actually ensure that what we sell, because banks sell trust, is something that you can always know that you have as it relates to us. The other threats that it would help us with really is around cybersecurity issues that would impact everybody, because criminals are the smartest people in the world. So your fraud detection tools actually assist to actually block out threats that might impact you from a client perspective. So I think we've been leveraging AI tools for a while now and leveraging data for a while now. So it's not necessarily anything new for us per se.
Yeah. Okay. Nomonde, just to looking at skill shortage, we know that we have it's common knowledge.
Yeah.
But what are some of the skills that the banking sector is like that they the biggest shortage though? Like if you can, what is it?
Data analytics skills, cybersecurity skills, and those are skills that are sought after globally as well. We do have an issue with those skill sets. What perpetuates, I would say, the problem that we have from a South African market perspective would definitely be that the cost of education for tertiary institutions is quite high. And we have a problem with an unequal society, so not everyone can afford to go into university. Even in instances where you are trying to bridge the gap of saying, how do you then teach, let's say, young people how to code, or you open up cybersecurity schools? It's still not enough to be able to cater to the volume of skills that you'd actually need to close the gap within our sector and industry. Again, this is an issue that would probably require us to think around how do we actually solve for that. Unfortunately, our skills are also going out, right? So we have a brain drain of skills of people then paying in dollars, in euros. And then you can't compete by counter offering that because our salaries are not going to be able to match that. So you do have South Africans who are working from South Africa getting paid in foreign currency. So you can't even compete in trying to retain those skill sets. There has to be a way, I don't know how, but I'm happy to think around it with other people who are smarter than me around how to accelerate the pace of upskilling with these specific skills that we need and being able to retain those skills.
How is this lack of skills affected the banking sector or even like your organization?
Not in a great way here. Like I think also when you're in a smaller organization, when you lose one person, when you only have 3 or 2, it's already a problem from like a succession perspective, right? And then trying to replace those skills will take you months. It's going to actually take you months. So it creates obviously a backlog of work that individual that you've lost was actually assisting with. So you're slower in terms of output, where ordinarily if you had like a full team, you'd actually be able to submit stuff out or, push things out into the organization far quicker. I don't think this is unique though, just to us as a small entity. Even the bigger banks actually struggle with the same thing. It does put pressure because then when somebody already understands your business, when you bring someone new in, it would take them a minimum of 6 months to actually understand how the organization works, because each organization has its own nuances that they actually work with. So it really just, in my, outside of other problems and challenges it creates, it really just stalls the pace of delivery that you'd need to be working with.
Sure, it's quite an interesting one. Nomonde, just to hear from you, you have such a your career, your background, your career has like so many milestones. So what's your next?
My goodness. You have been asked that quite frequently lately. I don't know how to answer that, to be honest with you. But I do believe that I probably have one more job, if that, in technology, and afterwards I'm moving out of tech.
Mhm.
And I want to move into a business role and actually start implementing and plowing my skill sets in an actual direct business function role. I think that would be the most logical next step for me.
Wish you all the best with that, Nomonde.
Thank you so much.
Such a great case, and thank you for accommodating us.
Listen, thank you for the privilege of your time. And again, happy International Women's Day to all of you phenomenal ladies out there. Thank you so much. I had so much fun with you.
Thank you, Nomonde, for your time. That was Nomonde White-Ndlovu. She is the CIO of Bidvest Bank. For more on these, click here.